There we go. Welcome everyone back to the Jankyard. I am your host, The Treatment, and I've got somebody new on stream today. We've got NinjaDanceMat, aka Tim, aka our Irish friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Teaching has just started again, so things are a bit hectic for me, but with new Ashes cards, I'm excited for the Ashes world, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. This was your idea. So why don't you tell the people what we're doing?
Yeah, we're basically starting some new content for Ashes where we discuss some stuff, we look at cards, we talk about it. I'm excited to discuss some things, and then we're gonna play some Ashes, of course,
Yeah.
and interact with chat as well.
You've been absolutely smashing it lately. Like you went
Thank you.
from I don't even know, like outside the top 10 to all of a sudden number 1 in a matter of 3 months. So you've been putting in a lot of work across these tournaments.
Maybe I think that I've certainly had some success. I'm not sure that I think the Elo ladder reflects necessarily like totally the best player. So I definitely don't think that me being number one reflects I'm the best player. I know that I get destroyed by people enough to do that's definitely not true. So maybe more just a case of the way things line up randomly, but I've definitely been enjoying Ashes recently and really getting into the strategy and the deck building and stuff. But I think with these new cards, we'll see if my old strategies and old decks will work. I can already see that there's a meta shift with Paladin in particular and some of the divine stuff that people are really abusing. I need to sort of catch up on a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've been in almost every top cut and several of the legendary knockout arena top cut or final matches, you and Brian or you and whoever. And I wonder, like before you, it was under rug swept, and I don't. I'm just curious now. It just started making me think whether there are metas that favor certain people. I mean, matchups are always
Mm.
one thing with who you tend to play well against or who you perhaps fear. I know there are some players that I always struggle with, like Brian. Um,
And Kyle, I
yeah,
think Underswept Rug, I think, would actually probably show up a lot more in these tournaments if he was in them, because I think he typically just plays the Phoenix League matches, and he's recently in this one and done tournament he's running. He's doing pretty well in that one, so I definitely think that's a factor in terms of some people don't necessarily play in every tournament, which
yeah.
is
Time
interesting.
zones, time zones are tricky. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
just like whether
no,
there'll
but
be a shift again based off of the types of cards. I mean, I'm very excited about Illusion, which just got released
no.
today on Ash Techie and Ash's Live, which is really
I
really
think it
cool.
was Killer was saying about like being the Ashes villain and always playing on these alternate win conditions like burn or mill or doing something like weird and off meta to win the game. I definitely think that there's almost like two ways of playing Ashes where you're either playing like really honest Ashes, you're just trying to outmath your opponent essentially,
Hmm.
and then there's sort of like a combo Ashes where you do something that's so unbelievably powerful that your opponent, it doesn't matter how well their efficiency machine is running, they'll just lose to your burn or your mill or whatever it is. So I think in answer to your question, maybe those are like two different metas that might help different kinds of players. I'm not sure.
Well, I wonder if post what is it? Astra was divine, right? Or was she charm? Because
The charm.
that's when I would
Yeah.
say like your rise took off, and it was also pre errata or ban of molten gold, where
Yeah.
everyone sort of had said, "Oh, lost faith in burn," and you're like, "Astria is number one on my list," and you like even Brankus was doing really well in every tournament. Um,
With
and so
Jasper. So
yeah, so I wonder if there was a little bit of that. I mean, combo decks can I think they're matchup dependent because you can just get trounced if you're not expecting, a 3 attack round 1 Rhino or something like that, or a standstill swing for 10 Fighting Spirit, Wishing Wing deck, whatever that those types of things are. But then there are the regular control-y good stuff card decks that did my whole computer crash? Yes, it did.
Oh,
I think it did. Or is
we're
it
not
just my screen?
live.
No, we're good. We're not live.
We're good. We're good.
We're
No,
good.
I
All
think,
right.
I think we're. I'm not
Just
sure.
my screen. Yeah. So it's interesting. There's definitely a push and pull, and then there are some players who are just sort of good all the time. Like the Matt, the Carl, the Brian. Like it doesn't matter what the meta is, they always perform really well.
Definitely.
So let's. Do you want me to pull up the new cards? We can switch over because they're now on Ashes. I can look at those
Yeah,
and talk about them.
absolutely. The funny thing about Astria is that the one tournament I won with Astria was actually before Charm released.
Was
so
it?
I don't know if what that means about my style of play or anything else, but it does. I think that's the thing I always try and say, because everyone says Astria Judgment. Oh yeah, Judgment's the best card, and that's why Astria is good. I just want to say I think Astria is good without Judgment. You can hate me for that opinion if you want, but that's definitely my take.
I don't think you're wrong. Astria was one of my, I guess, preferred off meta picks 2 years ago. When it was very different though, and I did take her to Gen Con and came in third on a burn list, featuring
Yes.
one, maybe two, no, one Mark of Goddess. So it's still both burn and Astria still good.
Yeah.
But this meta I think might be my favorite. Divine and illusion cards, these two sort of together. I just like trickery. I like the big hype plays, the things that the reactions that catch you off guard and that are just fun and make you laugh or make you go, oh, I did not see that coming. And there's a lot of that, I think, in this set. So we'll see if I perform or not.
Well, it's not really. It's just about having a good time with Ashes. I think that could definitely be something that I forget whenever I get absolutely obliterated in a match. Because sometimes Ashes is over in the first round, and you're just like, oh, okay, that's the end.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to be like, you know what? I'll just think about something else for a while, then come back and play another game and try and enjoy the game again after that. Let's have a look
Let's
some of
have a
these
look.
new cards. Yeah, because I'm excited. And I think we kind of want to look at the idea of how to deck build, and why not start with how to deck build around a new card.
Yeah, new set. Like what are the things that you look
Yeah.
at when you see new cards and what does your brain start doing? Like how are you going to fit this in? Do you think about the meta? Do you think about the strength of the individual cards? Do you look at what are the obvious or non-obvious synergies or combos that you can pull off? Like how do you build? Because people have heard me and Killer and Shmeny talk a lot about our style of building, but what's your take on it?
I think that my style of building is very different depending on whether or not I'm just trying to have fun or I'm trying to make a really good competitive deck. I definitely think that there's flaws to how I instinctively build, because I usually build decks with so many ideas in them that they don't have a chance of winning in a casual random Ash Techie game. But then I'll learn something. I'll learn something about an interaction that I think might be good in a proper competitive deck. Whereas I think that some of the better players, like the people we've mentioned, definitely are much faster in that process of identifying what's like a really strong combination of cards. So if I was to get better myself at deck building, and if I was to give advice, it would probably be more in the style of how other people deck build, which is to, I think, identify one new idea, one new combo, one new thing, and then slot it into an archetype
Okay.
type in a package of really powerful cards that already exists, which is obviously hard to do. It's obviously hard to do that if you don't know what those packages are, those archetypes are. But it's something that I think the better players do a lot, and I see a lot of on Ashteki casual games and things.
Well, I think if you wanted to know what are common or at least current archetypes, there is somebody who's been writing some very lengthy and detailed articles that are available on the wiki that have covered at least what now, the 13th, 12, 13 of the Phoenix Born?
Yeah, we're down to half. We've done tier. I've done tier A and B of my Phoenix Born. I think are the best at the moment. The problem with this tier, of course, is that it's taking me so long to write that the new releases are changing and shifting the which Phoenix Born are actually uh better tiered. So something like Victoria, I have spoilers, but she's not at the top of my list. She's not going to make an appearance for a while, but that's probably unfair because who knows? Maybe Victoria is now at least a solid choice. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I think she's still a big question mark for me. Although Magnificence is certainly interesting. One die, do every single illusion card ability in one. It's a lot of value. So we'll see if it bumps her out of the lowest tier. I think anything really should bump her up. You know, it's just a whether surprise is still good
Mm.
enough to carry the rest of the package, whatever that happens to be. But yeah, let's.
I just saw I just saw in chat Dijon, the absolute legend, is
Yes.
asking about when a new set comes out, do you play the pre-con it comes with, or just pick out a few choice cards? Sounds like you do the latter. Yeah, definitely. So like the pre-con is always really, really bad. It's just a combination of all of the new cards in a way that isn't the way the game's designed. Like Ashes still isn't designed really with precons that are really powerful. It's a lot better than it used to be, I think, because Platinum Games wants you to be able to play them in PvE just out of the box. But usually there's actually quite a lot of different ideas in those cards in a way that's really obviously makes the game fun to play the new archetypes rather than just a package of cards. You just stick them all in a deck and there you go. So I definitely think just pick out a few cards and then try them with stuff that you are already familiar with is the way to go.
Yeah, I I guess I mostly agree with that. I would say that the synergies from the Red Rains um, decks onwards, the precons,
Yep.
every card has synergy, like internal synergy within the precon, which is really good. And it really just comes down to copies of the cards that are perhaps unnecessary. I mean, there are definitely some cards that you look at and you're like, I just think this is bad. And so you could cut it. But I think that there's enough cards that you probably could take all of like 10 of them, right? And say, I'm going to play each one of these cards to see what they do, but then cut the copies of them and insert some of the other things they're missing. Like, you know, they tend to not be heavy in units, right? Because you're trying to fit 10 different ideas in that they might not have, you know, the 11 or
Yeah.
14 allies that some people run, or they might not have the 5 books that you want to run with a Hope or a Ramia, so you fit in those extra copies, or they might not have the reach, so you fit in those, or based on the current meta, you're like, I definitely need, I don't know, a Fester or 2 Shadows or some hard removal for the Paladins, things like that. And so you could just add in rather than drastically changing. But I tend to look at a couple cards as the most interesting, or the things that I see as a really powerful synergy, and either fitting them in another similar deck or building around them entirely, like from scratch. I like building off new ideas. And then because I've done a couple different deck building things with different people, sometimes I'll
Hmm.
revisit them and slot them in. Like oh, this is a much better card than what we had before, and sort of update the decks. But yeah, there's all different kinds of ways. But let's go through the cards, and like, or you can just pick out, like you said, one or two that you think are really interesting and where you would want to start. I can actually, I'll create a deck, and
Mhm.
we'll. Who do you want to start? You got to choose a Phoenix Born. So who do you want to start with?
Well, we're really looking at like one of the four new Phoenix Born, I would say, for that have new uniques. We don't necessarily have to use those new uniques,
No.
but it could definitely be a starting point um, to see what do you want to start first starting point for a deck. The other way of thinking about it is we do the opposite, which is that instead of starting with the Phoenix Born, you start with a deck idea and then you
Mm-hmm.
try and work out which Phoenix Born you actually want to run with that. Which is how I typically deck build. Um, but it depends on, yeah, if you're looking at the unique or you're looking at the ability. I know a lot of people will be running I don't know how to say these Phoenix Borns names. Remia. How do you say
Ramia
that?
is,
Remia.
yeah.
Yeah, we need the Isaac to tell us exactly how to pronounce these Phoenix Born again. But yeah, I know a lot of people will be playing her because that ability is nuts. So 2 cards is going to just unlock so many deck ideas.
Yeah, the
Um,
ability to focus things, and that extra
yeah.
battlefield slot really, it sort of makes Ancestral Army more viable in addition to other summon books, like because it was always sort of constraining. You could get hosed, and now you have that one extra little slot. But
So
I'm
I've made four decks recently
oh
just
cool.
for the new release, and I can tell you what my starting point was. It was what if it was Hope and the new Scrawler, and I was like, okay, what does a deck built around Scrawler look
Mhm.
like? There was I was really getting sick of losing to Paladin, so I thought, okay, Coal Fester, that's your starting point. Abundance gives you cards, and then what new illusion cards do I want in that archetype that already exists?
So do you want to
Um,
start there, like build off, or do you already have the deck built?
I already have the deck built. I was kind of interested to see what you would do with these new cards, or we could start with a completely different process.
Yeah, no, sure. So I tend to be
Just
synergy. Well, it depends. It depends on my mood, and also depends what I've been playing lately. So if I've been stuck on a certain style, uh, then I'll usually look to a different style or a different Phoenix Born that supports something. Or if I, when I was doing the various challenges, get to 10 wins, get to this and that, I would switch up what Phoenix Born I was playing for that sake. And in fact, I
okay.
still have two left on that challenge. Victoria and Auric are still very underplayed and under wins.
Yeah.
But I like synergies, and Prowler is certainly a card that has me
Mm-hmm.
interested, as well as uh, Backflip and From Darkness. Um, those ones are just really, really interesting. Which Phoenix Born
Yeah.
in this set, I don't particularly care, although Hope Scrawlers, that like it just on its own, that type of thing is very interesting. I know Matt Bowers keeps talking about Bali and the Knight. Um,
Yeah, that would be a really interesting one to go to look at because I don't know what I would do with that.
yeah, so that's
I
another
don't know how that works and how you do. Is it terrible? Maybe, but Matt Barr says it isn't terrible. So let's just say it isn't terrible.
He says it's
And like
amazing.
that's our starting point.
Yeah,
Let's just say it's the best card ever. Why is it the best card ever? Let's try and work it out.
that's another area. Like when I struggle with something where I don't see the value, or I'm trying to be a naysayer and break out of, like when I first started, I played Noah for I think the first year of Shuffle Bus tournaments because everyone said he was terrible, and of
Mhm.
course he wasn't great. Masked Wolf did does struggle, and now he's pretty good, but that was my approach. So let's take this. What's it called again? Victoria symbol, Dark Reflection,
Yeah. Okay.
and let's see how good we can make this. So you look at Dark Reflection, it's a 3/3 for 2. Um, do you immediately start with 3 copies of the new cards and then cut back after, or do you just start with 1 copy and see where you go from there?
Yeah, I definitely just dump a whole bunch of copies of cards in, and I always look at the copies much later in the deck building process.
Okay.
I'll just throw way more than 30 cards in, and then I'll start cutting stuff and bringing copies of the number of copies of cards down. So we'll start with 3 copies of Dark Reflection.
Sure.
Um, the exception, of course, is unique cards. So like we might want to put in, I can't remember Symboli's other
Purify.
unique spell, Purify, yeah. But that card is pretty bad in the first place. So I'm not sure. We'll see. It definitely has its place. So we could consider putting. We could just put 1 copy in, 2 copies of Dark Reflection, put 1 copy of
Purify. Yeah.
Purify in, just to be able to look at it.
I was actually thinking of that anyway because I think there's a lot of good conjurations out there, um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also now a lot of good allies. So the ability to pop 1 for 1 and also bring back something is interesting. Even like something against Snake or whatever, right? Every now and then you get caught out against something you didn't expect, and you're like, I really wish I could just nuke this for 1.
Yeah,
Uh, so
that's fair.
yeah.
Eh,
Okay. So what Carl says this is some Dark Reflection is very very good. So
Okay. Okay.
Carl,
That's interesting.
what is your one card? Let's take audience feedback. What is the one card that synergizes really well with this thing? 3/3 for 2, and it deals 2 damage to a target unit an opponent controls. So it's either you drop it and you ping for 2, or you know, late round you
Well,
drop it and you get a 3/3 swing.
I think 2 basics for a 3/3. There's 2 ways of looking at this. The first is the evaluation of a 3/3 for 2 basics. Like, is there a world where you don't use this ability to deal something direct damage? I don't know that there is. I think surely you have to get the value from the sleigh. Carl will maybe tell us in the chat his opinion on this one. But like, if we're not getting the 2 damage from the direct kill, then I don't think we're playing this card correctly. I think really what this is essentially at its ceiling is you're spending 2 basic dice to deal 2 damage to something, which is like 2 frog pings, right? So it's pretty good. You would consider frog pinging twice during the course of the game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a body. It's a 3/3. It's a 3/3, which your opponent can destroy to burn you. But ultimately, that's still resources that they're putting into face damage. So, or rather, like PB life damage. So we want I think a deck that is all about the battlefield, where we don't really care that our opponent spent a whole bunch of time killing it and dealing us damage. We don't care about the damage. We just are happy that they spent those resources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so we want like super battlefield focused, where we can deal this direct damage, and then we just leave this body on the battlefield potentially for our opponent to feel good about killing, but actually, they're wasting their time while we are gaining the advantage on the battlefield.
Yeah, and my thought, which I just had now, was if you want to maximize. So there two things. One is if you want to maximize value of Slay,
Yep.
particularly in a world where there are recently a lot of 3 lifers out there, then having an extra source of ping, particularly main ping, is nice
Yep.
because what you could do is you could drop this and say, okay, it's a 3/3 for 2. Either I'm going to
Definitely.
swing it or you come at me, and then you could do a main action ping and a side action for 2, kill something 3 life. The other thing is if you could avoid taking the 2 wounds by letting this get destroyed, that's good. So unit guard is something that I think is valuable. And so with those 2 things, Gilder comes to mind among many. And when I think, oh, then we're in at the very least one charm, and I think this is a card you enjoy, or maybe a few people enjoy it, but call to action is a nice
Hmm.
card as well. Getting a refresh when they try and swing at you. So that's sort of where my mind goes, is having a Gilder book in here. Um, but I'm open
Yeah,
to
definitely.
suggestions.
I think that's a good starting point, and it's also a good demonstration of like how you take the unique idea of how do we use dark reflection, and then you're aware of these staples. So like Gilder is like one of the ultimate staples. So much value from that card. The summon with the guard ability, and then the direct damage for a main action.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you kind of have to learn the card pool, and then you can start building from these staples. So yeah, I think thinking about, okay, what are the staples that already exist that work best with this new card, and then start thinking about other funky wild ideas is definitely a good starting point. So we're in dice now. We're in, like you say, Gilder puts us in both charm and nature.
Nature. Yep. But luckily,
Um,
we're still very open with. Oh, hey Charlotte, what's going on? And Fritzy. Good to have a bunch of people joining in. Um,
Definitely.
do is there any other card from the new set that jumps out at you that you want to try, that you think synergizes well in this, in a Symboli style deck?
Hmm. I think if there's potential here for the new reaction that deals damage based from an exhausted unit,
From
because
Darkness.
from darkness,
Yep.
yeah. Um, if we have our if we immediately slay something, then we just immediately have an exhausted unit,
Mm-hmm.
which means we can just threaten 3 damage from then on against anything that attacks us. And from what a little I've already played of these new cards, I just played some new games. I got destroyed in some of them. So it was an educational process as always. Um, and I think it's a lot easier to trigger, from my experience anyway, this from darkness than it is to trigger, say, for example, shadow strike, or some of the other reactions that are more conditional. Something attacking you and you having an exhausted unit, I think it's actually quite likely.
Okay, so I'll just put in two for now, and we can always go up or down from there. So we're now in three colors. Um, I never color restrict off the bat. Sometimes I specifically want to build one or two or three or what colors, but for this, I'm just, we only got splashes, so I'm interested to see where you go. Is there anything else that sings to you? Gates Defender, Backflip. Um, so Backflip is almost like a Purify in some ways, except you're boosting damage to something else. Uh,
Hmm.
Acrobat, Shade Prowler, and Whisperer. So if we're going battlefield oriented, I don't think Whisper makes any sense. We're not really on a spin down sort of idea here.
No. And backflip, we really need to start putting allies in that can combo with it, which is specifically not uh, our direct damage dealing ally. If anything, we don't really want to interact with our summon here, or the new ally rather. Um, we want to leave it on the board as something that's annoying for our opponent to have to deal with, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we don't want to juggle. We don't want to do anything else with our unit. I think your idea of unit guard is a good idea. So we could potentially look at the acrobat as being an inclusion there to try and protect a
Acrobat
little bit.
isn't the unit. Oh, it is unit guard. I was thinking Gates
Mhm.
Defender, which is the alert unit. Okay, so yeah, okay. Do you think Prowler on a five battlefield gets rid of itself? Worth
From
having?
what the thing about Prowler is, you want to boost the attack. That's what Prowler is all about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it as just, oh, it's tech for one attack and less units, but if a card has a ceiling, you might as well be hitting that ceiling, which means um, to get the best value out of that card, I feel like we're boosting the attack somehow. That could be a divine dice. It could be another attack boosting card, but those don't really exist in illusion except for we've got now which is it? Is
Backflip.
it flip or backflip? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but then we're sort of starting to get into other combos and other territory.
Mm-hmm.
So we could do that, and that could be how we build around our divine.
Okay. So
That's
what's
a fourth dice. That's a fourth dice type.
yeah, it would be if we went into one of those. Um, okay, so we can start stretching out of this set, and I won't put in Prowler yet. And you know we only have the one summon. We've got 4 spell boards if we choose to dip into that. Are you someone who maximizes your spell board slots, or do you sort of just pick what you think makes the most sense? And then going for it. Fritzy's just said, since you're in charm, you could try reducing the opponent's attack
Yeah,
value, which is also a really sensible
definitely.
approach.
So we could look at Charmer, Chimera Charm, I think they're called, is the easiest way of doing that, and then Royal Charm, with Charm dice pumps out. Those are the two easiest way that I know of actually reducing attack. Because there's stuff like the Badger, that technically makes it easier to use a Charm dice, but I find that it really doesn't get you there in terms of pumping out those divine dice. So those are the two I would look at.
Yeah, I have not particularly found Badger. I haven't found a place where I really like it yet. But okay, so Chimera Charmer, yeah, is definitely an option. Royal Charm. When do you start thinking about first 5? Do you add in all the cards you sort of like? Do you get halfway done a deck and then say, okay, what's the actual first 5 plan here? Because something like Royal Charm, where you naturally want it in on the board as soon as possible, but it also can change your dice cost for the first 5, or maybe not put off a lot of pressure, is definitely something to consider. How do you approach that?
Hmm. I tend to throw a whole bunch of cards into my deck and then try to turn it into something good. Because if I look at a blank page and I think, oh, I'm going to invent a first 5, I find that really hard. If I
Mm-hmm.
have a whole bunch of cards and then I identify a problem like, oh, there's 5 cards I could have for my spell board here, but they don't add up to 10 dice, then I could try swapping a card out for a different option and then making a better first 5 that way.
Okay. All right. So we've got 3 different types of allies, 2 of which are knights. So we probably want something cheap on the ally area, especially if we're gonna play any number of. Well, if we, I haven't added backflip yet, but if we did decide to go down that way, do you want me to restrict it to just these 3 colors right now? Are
Yeah,
we? Yeah.
let's do that, and we'll keep things simple. And then if we really want to, we can splash in a third color at some other junction.
Okay.
Um, the one thing to note here is that the Summon Gilder has a charm cost initially, which means that it's going to be you can pretty consistently summon it afterwards with the nature dice, but because the charm is the book tax cost, we definitely want to have ways of spending that charm in subsequent rounds.
Yeah, I put in one call to action just as a reminder, and I have the Chimera Charmer there. So just putting down our ideas to see where we
Okay,
end up. Um,
so the basic thing that's forming here, the basic idea is we're using Royal Charm with the Gilder, which is always a nice round one. I find you can definitely uh, spin up that charm dice if you even need to trigger the Royal Charm off playing the Gilder.
mhm.
Um, we put out the charm dice, so we definitely want the summon. What's the new summon for the Prowler? Yeah, we
Would you
definitely
want
want the
Prowler?
Prowler.
All right.
Yeah, that's the point of our charm dice, as Fritz suggested. We can make something. We can give something the dice with the royal charm, and then we can kill it hopefully with our prowler attack, which in turn will help us dominate the battlefield because we're playing 2 direct damage on something.
Yeah. Um, I like that so far. Very good. And I was looking at um, I was looking at the allies, and there's some good options. I mean, Rose Gardener, if we care about, if we're going deeper into charm, is always nice.
Mm.
It's a cheap ally. It's really good for the meditations. Um, there's Glory, which doesn't really help us because we're not in Divine yet, and I don't assume we will be. Anchor Knot, I think, at least in my experience, tends to be a bit more cloggy in Symboli, unless you're really going with boosted type attacks or zero attack plan. Um, which I guess in theory we could. Then we've got Raptor Herder, Jungle Forager for alterations, which is always interesting. Enchanted Violinist, if we wanted to lean into any sort of mill plan. Same thing with Hollow on the spin down side. And then that's basically it for our one costers. Then we get into two costers, one of which is one of my favorite units, Beast Tamer. Um, and that is a charm unit. And I do recall Matt Bowers talking about a double knight, like 2 knights, Beast Tamer. I keep forgetting the name of this unit. Dark Reflection.
Yeah, the
Reflection
new
and
cards.
yeah, that's a solid 10 dice if you wanted to start that if you needed to. But yeah, that's sort of where we are. And then there's you know Gates Defender, and nothing else sings to me right now.
So I think if I was for deck building, my next step is definitely I'm looking at this and I'm thinking we've got 3 books. We've got Gilder, we've got the the Prowler, we've got the Royal Charm.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of filling out the rest of that spell board, I definitely would go for I think 4 books here. In terms of what is that next book going to look like, and also which dice color are we going to invest in here as putting a whole bunch of dice in of that color.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the Acrobat and Charm, which the Chimera Charmer, which kind of puts us into both Charm and Illusion. So this kind of looks like it's becoming a main Charm, main Illusion deck.
Yep.
Um,
We would need at least, in theory, if we played either of those, we're going to need at least 2 more charm and 2 more illusion on top of
yeah.
being able to start the books. So it's 3-3-1, and then we've got 3 dice that are open depending on where we choose to go.
So because of that, I'm thinking, do we want a charm summon for our 4th book, or do we want an illusion summon? So we probably want to look at the options available to us there.
Okay. One possibility is the Mind Fog Owl, at least if it was focused, is also a way of cheating some charm dice into play, and it gives
That's true.
an interesting ability. Like if I think about that with Prowler and you removing the chump blocker, and then they have to use something good, that's always interesting. We also have the Umbral Acrobat that can do some funny things with flipping values. So that's one option. There's we talked about Badger. There's Adaptodon if we really pushed more than just the one nature die. False Demon is always a solid illusion summon. Nightshade Swallow, Mist Spirits, Cobra if we wanted more on the mill. Shadowhounds, Shimmer Wings. There's a lot of things to consider. So what do you think? Like, how do you approach this? Do you think of like, what am I missing? What kind of matchup am I struggling with, or would I struggle with, or what do I want more of? Like more ping, more beef, more, I don't know. Like what's your
Yeah,
approach?
I think this choice is probably what separates the most players. Because now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I know if I was Matt Bowers, I'm probably really thinking about putting that spirit in, the shadow spirit, because that's like the style of play that I'm familiar with from him and his decks. And then if I'm Carl, I'm thinking, oh, I've got to put that Ruby Cobra in. And I've recently been copying that style and putting Ruby Cobra in a lot of decks, though it's probably not a great time to do that anymore because of acrobats killing all your things, your 0/2s,
And
and
prowlers,
Adept killing. Yeah, just everything. It's
everything.
a
Yeah.
sad time. It's a sad time for 0/2s nowadays. But Ruby Cobra used to be so good, and Carl kind of proved that to me, really. So like this is where it's really hard to say what the right answer is in deck building. I would probably go for the false demon because I'm just thinking we've got some direct damage. It's a main action direct damage on something that is exhausted. So maybe it doesn't combo with our idea here of using the slay on something. But in general, we don't have necessarily like a basic sync summon at the moment. It's Gilder. Oh no, we do. We have the Prowler.
The
So
prowler is
yeah,
also sync. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
I do
I'm
like
not
the
sure.
demon. I do like it. Unless we really wanted to invest in multiple mind fog books, I wasn't really seeing anything else that I think fits this
The mind fog,
style of approach.
the mind fog is a good idea. It's just that our uh, the ability on the mind fog oil is not very powerful and efficient in this battlefield focused deck. It's more sort of a bypass tool, and then the focus is really where your idea comes into its highest power level, and it becomes basically like a good reason to include it. It's just a case of, is the game going to go on long enough for that to matter? Can we get the focus? I mean, if we draw the second card in the second round, that's wonderful.
The only other thing that we could do is if we are planning on leaning in to more allies,
Mm-hmm.
then snakebite is a potential consideration uh, to sort of synergize with the royal charm spin down. It's also a main source of ping, um,
Yep.
and so that's a potential. We're almost certainly not going to get to the latter part of the focus effect, which is when our opponent has no cards in their draw pile because we're not doing anything mill based. But it's still a ping
Yeah.
to a unit.
I think so. The same thing. So here's my honest take on deck building in Ashes, which is that like if you look at a card like Snakebite, um, it's not very good. And I would say the same thing about the Mind Fog Oil. Now, whenever a card in my mind isn't this powerhouse of like it's a staple, like Gilder for example, it's just so unbelievably good. You get the ping and the unit with guard, which is just so much better value than spending a dice on a single damage like you would for a frog ping. So if you're looking at Snakebite and you're thinking I'm going to include Snakebite in a deck, I'd be like, this needs to be high value to overcome how typically bad this card normally is. So if we're not using the focus effect and we're not on a long-term game plan, I wouldn't personally consider Snakebite, because we're paying one dice for a charm, which is a dice power, and then we could potentially deal damage to it. But if we do deal damage to it, then we are presumably trying to kill it with the damage, and therefore we're essentially spending one dice for one damage potentially. So ultimately, it just doesn't look like a good evaluation for me.
Yeah. I mean, the counterpoint is only that
Yeah.
at least if you if you could buff up, if you were more on a buff style play for the prowler where you were getting it to a
Yes.
high enough value that you could then take down like a knight or something. And so that's the difference of 3 damage versus 4 damage matters. You could sort of synergize a little bit more because you get the one ping from the snake bite. You've reduced the attack value on the knight for any sort of counter swing, and then the prowler can swing and deal. It does 3 to any unit that has less attack value. So that would be my only
That's true.
thought. It's more of a build around, where you really have
Yeah.
to say, okay, I want to make snake bite work, or I'm really going to make the intention of my deck is going to be buff a shade prowler to always be that night killer threat. Whereas we've
That's
sort of flipped it.
It's a good point. Where you could end up dealing 1 damage with a charm dice as well as enabling the prowler in a way that simply using a frog ping doesn't. But I think the whole frog ping as a I'm on the junkyard after all, so frog up. I think when comparing values of things, if you say, oh, how does this value versus a frog ping, I think that's a good starting point. I
Yeah.
think you could go for the snake bite based on your logic, but I wouldn't personally.
Sure. Okay. So, this is your show. So here we go.
It's our show.
People have listened to me talk enough about jank and my crazy ideas, and I'm not doing so hot. So we need some more allies, realistically, or at least some cheap allies, because right now we're knight heavy, and even like our books are two costs demon, 2 cost prowler. So how we're at 12 cards out of 30 without bumping any copies. What do you think we're missing here?
Yeah, this is where I think I would start throwing in, unless I have any other specific combinations or combo ideas. Like, for example, the whole Royal Charm Prowler idea that we have, and then the Dark Reflection main action damage. I would start putting a bunch of staples in, cards that I know are good from those particular dice types that we already have included. But before I do that, there is one more thing, because you did say about dealing damage as a main action. So I wonder, I'm thinking, are there any cards in our current dice pool that do that?
Um, I mean, there's the backflip, which does a buff, but that's a side action. We've got Rile the Meek, but we're not on 0 attacks. We've got Nature's Wrath, of course.
Yeah.
Return to Soil is 1 damage. And that isn't actually a bad option. Dealing 1 damage and also removing something. In this case, it would actually be the reverse. You would slay first and then return to soil and be able to remove a unit from play. There's close combat, although it does depend on an unexhausted unit, so that's a little bit anti-synergy. Seeds of Aggression is generally a solid option anytime you're in charm, especially if you have small battlefield. It sort of solves the self-sack ability or need. Clashing Tempers, but that's a side action. And I think that's basically it. Freezing Blast, but that's terrible. I mean,
yeah, I
it's
would
funny.
definitely go for Nature's Wrath here in terms of an inclusion that we could potentially combo with the side action 2 damage to take out something suddenly for 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the top of round, for example, when you've already got the Dark Presence, maybe, and then because of that, we need to think: do we need another Nature's Dice for that? Probably not. We could get away with 1 Nature's Dice because we just don't first 5 it.
Yeah. There's actually, just as a side note, the funny comparison. We were talking about spending 2 dice for Dark Reflection to effectively get a 2 ping. And Freezing Blast is 2 dice. It's not basic in this case, but it's deal 2 damage to a target unit, and you get to remove 2 status tokens. So,
oh my goodness, no way!
Extra
2
value.
Status tokens. That's so good.
The snake.
For whenever you deal it 2 damage and don't kill it.
Yeah. It's almost it's too bad it's not the reverse, because then at least you could
Mm,
blast a wishing wing or a mirror spirit, or whatever, but anyway, it's just a funny comparison. So you were thinking add in
definitely.
some wraths, that was
Yeah,
what.
definitely. Wrath is
Okay.
always good. So put in some wraths, and then we can look at some staples for the cards. Now there could be some new staples for illusion. I'm not sure. Like for example, the alert reaction uh, gate defender. I'm trying to
Yep,
remember.
that's Gates
It
Defender,
could
yeah.
that could be a staple. It could be just a really solid inclusion in a illusion heavy deck. I honestly have no idea because I haven't played with the card very much yet. But
is
we could
there
always splash it a bit.
is there any action cards other than like Wrath, specifically removal, that you think are worth it? Like, I'm just looking at the list. I see Farewell,
Yeah, farewell, definitely.
Backflip, Two Shadows, the Return to Soil, if we wanted to do that. Do any of those stand out to you?
Yeah, farewell definitely stands out as a staple. If we go like 4 dice into charm, then we can play farewell for sure.
Hmm.
And we can even play farewell with only a couple of dice and just play it as a 2 dice removal.
Yeah.
Forget about the middle. So we definitely could include that.
Okay. Uh, Two Shadows, I like to have at least one of, especially if we're in Illusion already. It deals with some of the bigger threats for cheap. Like, I'm thinking Paladin. Obviously you're going to lose the initial trade, but getting rid of it afterwards is always nice.
There's one
Uh,
more thing I want to talk about before we fill the rest of the deck with staples and
sure.
just sort of finish things and then review,
Hmm.
which is our ability Gifts of Wing, Zimbali. We haven't really talked about actually utilizing that ability on a key unit that we want to attack more than once. It's hard to combine it, strangely enough, with the From Darkness unique character because they're both side actions.
Yeah. I mean, to me, Gift of Wings definitely synergizes with Acrobat.
Yep.
It's a nice ability to flip things a few times and or swing potentially for four twice. Chimera Charmer, I don't know that we're gonna have enough debuff to make her worth swinging again. And then Dark Reflection, I mean, in theory, not going to be something I think you do round one where you're spending 4 dice just for two ping and the swing. But if you get top of round and you already have the reflection on board, being able to swing it again is then useful, like to slay and then swing on another turn is interesting.
Well, the charmer can quite often have almost like too much attack, where it
Hmm.
can very easily have a 4 attack from the charm dice that it comes out with, and then it's a bit of an overkill on something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Are there
Later rounds,
any
you're right.
are there any allies other than that are really worth? I mean, you have
So this is
Tamer
where we
or
could
Enchanted
consider
Violinist.
splashing time to put Realm Walker in
Ooh,
as as a ally that's definitely worth using Gifts of Wings on.
I thought you hated Realm Walker.
I do. I hate Realm Walker with a passion. Curse the existence of these cards that destroy me. Though I'm
Okay,
onto the paladin. I'm a paladin hater now. That's my new vibe
okay.
for the season.
Hmm.
Just because Realm Walker's no good anymore after the Golden Veil ban or Chain.
Chain, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I gotta find something new to hate.
So you want to splash? We can splash. That opens up things.
Yeah, and then talking about staples, you can't talk about staples without talking about Fate Reflection, which is also nice because it's both time and um, illusion, and so is Two Shadows, which you mentioned wanting to include.
Yep, I definitely agree there. So let's put in two Fate Reflections. Um, hmm. I'm just trying to think now. We've got some ping, which is good for swarm. I'm just worried about having 3 knights plus these books, and we don't have any other cheap units other than the gilder.
Hmm.
So that's the only thing I'm like, well, if we're adding in allies, I definitely like the idea of Rose Gardener, even if it's only, to help us meditate for free, or
Yeah.
against any sort of token deck like a Chant of Transfusion or a burn deck, for Chant of Revenge. So I don't mind putting in those. It's also basic cost, which is always nice. And then I'm not sure. Then then I get a little stuck here. I find the last 5 to 10 cards are always the cheapest, or sorry, trickiest, because you want
Mhm.
something that fulfills typically the meta needs, or what you've seen a lot. Like, when I build, it's like, what did I just recently lose to? And then it's like, okay, I know I need to shore up that weakness.
Yeah.
So I think about that, and I also wonder what else is going to be problematic. Is the scrawler going to be problematic? Are the whisperers going to be problematic? Like, is it worth including um, call upon the realms or any sort of dice fixing? Do we want what's that ink spill? The one that exhausts units as a
Hmm.
bypass, thing. There's a few things like that I'm like, is Nature's Wrath really going to be enough, or what's needed here?
I think there's like a bunch of different archetypes that you could use as a checklist for at least having one tool to have a solution for. So you could say, okay, you've got Nature's Wrath if your opponent is playing a lot of Swarm. What if your opponent is playing Paladin or big allies? Do you have removal? So like our removal is the 2 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say we're covering. So if they play Adaptodon, where they play a 2 health summon, we're having a great time because we just slap down our Dark Presence and deal the 2 damage.
Dark Reflection.
If Dark
Dark
Reflection,
Presence is
what's
another
another thing?
card, which actually is another card that synergizes incidentally, um, with, like, instead of Royal Charm, if you went with Dark Presence, that would also work, right? That reduces the attack and creates terrifying.
Dark Presence. Oh yeah. Um,
I think it's been a while since I've seen the card in
yes.
play.
It gives something terrifying. Does it reduce the attack of
If
something?
if focused, yeah, focus one, reduce the attack
Yeah.
value. Yeah, yeah. So that's
Okay.
the only the trick there. But otherwise, it gives the the terrifying
Yeah.
one. So anyway, so yeah, so we
So
have two. We
yeah.
have the
So like
ability to clear
removal.
twos.
So we don't necessarily have a great removal. We do have the 2 shadows, which is sort of like semi removal.
Mm-hmm.
Our fun removal card that I haven't seen played too much, but I've seen Red King actually play to great effect, is the double exhaustion action
Steady
card,
gaze.
Steady Gaze. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's not necessarily the battlefield control that this deck is necessarily looking for, but it's a possibility. We could consider another one that's kind of pseudo removal is the figures in the fog mist,
Yep.
figures in
Yep.
the
Figures in the fog.
yeah. As you can
Out
tell,
out
I'm
of the
really good
mist
with
is a
names.
different card.
The smog reaction.
Yes, out of the
Yeah.
smog.
So
Okay.
yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Like we do have farewell. So farewell is a pretty good removal spell. Then we've got like, what if the game's really long? Um, do we have any kind of long-term pivot? I've
Hmm.
actually been thinking about aggression as a way of dealing with long-term games where if you have enough really high attack units, then you can that can almost be like your long-term plan solution. So if you're against a long-term burn deck, or if you're against a mill deck, you can like hit really hard.
Which one?
Um, oh, just like conceptually, if you
Oh,
have high attack
conceptually. Yeah, yeah,
units, which we don't necessarily do because we've got the Gilder, which is a dice. We've got the Prowler. These are like control units, but they're not necessarily finisher big attack moves.
yeah. We are in charm. Something we didn't discuss is, I mean, we're already at 5 reaction spells. It tends to start getting where I consider, am I on too many reactions? But Sympathy Pain
Yeah.
is available, or Ensnare, which I think is actually spicier now, because of the ability to, between Prowler and Acrobat, or even Realm Walker,
Yeah.
eliminating other guards. It almost forces a Phoenix guard, and so that's some possibility.
I think what I'd probably do actually at this point is swap out the demon for the spirit for the hound. No, not the hound, the other one.
Shadow Spirit.
The shadow spirit, because or we could swap it out for Ruby Cobra, which is another really nice long-term solution. Because you were also saying about, oh, we don't necessarily have the one cost allies. We've got very expensive knights. So that
Yeah.
could also solve that issue at the same time.
Right. Right. What is, so? I mean, Shadow Spirit though is a power side.
Yeah.
Whisper is only one cost, as is just like the opposite option. And then
Yeah, I don't know how to evaluate Whisper.
I don't think
It
it's
is
for
really
this
the
deck,
counter. No.
but I do like it. Probably more so in a Hope deck. Uh, yeah. So let's see. Just let's go through the number of copies, because I just put sort of how I felt at the time. But we've got 8 cards left, so let me go through what we have, or you can see what we have.
Okay.
Right? You're looking at it.
Yeah, it's a little bit laggy in terms of the what I'm looking at versus the current version,
Let
but
me.
hopefully I can look
I can't.
at the deck list itself, and then also on I can't necessarily see all the
Yeah,
names
got our
because
face
our faces are plastered over it.
faces. Well, you can see their allies to start. So we've got Chimera
Yeah,
Charmer, Dark Reflection, Realm Walker, Rose Gardener, Umbral. Just one copy of each of the knights. I guess technically Reflection is a knight.
I would
And I got two.
definitely. So I'm thinking, what are the things that we've been talking about that I feel best about, and then I would definitely want just 3 of those. I feel really good about the acrobat based on what we've talked about,
Okay.
wanting to hit something hard, wanting that finisher, wanting another unit guard, and something funky to deal with problems. I feel less good about the Realm Walker and the Charmer, so we maybe don't want as many copies of those. I feel really good about our Prowler Royal Charm Gilder combo, as being like, okay, I know what I would do with that and how that would work as a play pattern.
So do you want to go higher on the Umbral Acrobats then? Two,
Yeah,
three.
I would run 3.
Okay. And then I'll move down so you can see our action spells. We've got 2 Farewells, 2 Wraths, a Purify, and a 2 Shadows.
At this point, I'd look at the Purify and say, do we need to run that
Yeah, like
at all?
at this point, we're not running cheap allies. We're, other than the Rose
Yeah.
Gardener, we're running pretty expensive things. So maybe we don't do the Purify. I was thinking like if we went more of the cheap stuff, that would be worth it. But
Definitely.
two. So do you like one of 2 shadows, or would you want to go up another one?
Keep it at 1. I would probably say.
Okay. And then we've got 5 reactions: a call to action, fate reflections, and from darkness, which I'm really excited about.
Definitely from darkness is where I feel good, because we're going to have a 3/3 that's exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the Prowler, which was quite likely to survive, which could be 2 damage, because our opponent will probably not want to bother actually killing it because it's going to fade anyway,
Mm-hmm.
or fade is the right name for that. And Fate Reflection on 2 is nice. At this point, I'd be most concerned with our dice and how that relates to the cards that we have. So I'd really want to nail our spread here. And the way I typically would do that is look at now what the actual first 5 would be, the standard first 5.
Mm-hmm.
What are the required dice for that? And then what are the extra dice that we can decide based on those basic syncs?
Yep, I agree. Um, okay, so and one thing to think of later is Golden Veil, just based on running
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of knights,
Oh, yeah.
is something I was thinking of. And it pairs well with Royal Charm. So if we started, if we could still cut Demon, but if we started this, we've got 1 illusion, 2 illusion between the books. We've got our nature and charm on the Gilder, and that's 6 dice. And then we probably are also running Royal Charm, which then puts us at 4 cards, but only 6 dice, which is a little tricky.
I must admit, I find that impossible to memorize. So what I would do is I would like take away all of the dice
Yeah,
in the deck builder and then add the ones, and then we can have like blank spaces for the ones that we can choose based on this first 5.
So we know that we have at least 2 illusions, a nature, and a charm required. And then we'll have 2 more basics that can be anything. So then it's whatever you are thinking is a first 5.
And then I would add one time, because we need to splash time if we're going to play the Realm Walker.
Yeah, we need at least that. Those are the required dice for the deck at this point.
So now, if we're looking at a first 5, we really need to run a knight here in our opening. We're maybe like way too down on dice here in terms of our first 5. Let's see.
I mean, the only option is if we ran Dark Reflection for 2 and then Gift of Wings for 2. That would be 4 dice. But that depends on Dark Reflection actually surviving. Because you never know. We could run...
so then we probably want to look at running 4 books... running 3 books and 2 knights as our standard opening.
So if we did, you weren't sure on False Demon, so if we drop that, then we only have a cost of 4 and 3 books. So then we can fit like 2 knights or whatever have you. That gives us a little more freedom. So we could, if we started Umbral Acrobat, then we would need at least 2 more illusion.
Yep.
If we wanted to. If we started Realm Walker, we have at least the time and 1 more illusion. And if we started Chimera Charmer, we would need 2 more charm. Is Chimera Charmer ever a first 5 option? Is that something you foresee playing?
No. I think
okay.
I think Chimera Charmer is going to fulfill the same role that our Royal Charm here is. So we could actually ditch the Royal Charm if we were running the Chimera Charmer potentially. But I like the Royal Charm in subsequent rounds a lot. So I think we don't run the Charmer in the first 5.
Okay. So then we don't need yet 2 charm, but we know we're gonna have to buff it up at least for the rest of the count.
Yes.
Okay, so we're thinking the 3 books for 4, and then 2 knights would be 10.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, if we're running both Acrobat and Realm Walker, we need at least 1 more illusion, and then that's 1, 2, 3 basics. Yep. So that's where we're at as a minimum required number of dice.
So then I want to look at which of those dice are first 5 only and which of those dice are repeating, because, for example, our nature is we're using to summon the Gilder, but we also have Nature's Wrath, which means that if we play Nature's Wrath, we're not summoning the Gilder, which I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So we either drop the Nature's Wrath, which is quite often what you do with Gilder. You just have dedicated Frog for Gilder, and you have no other nature dice.
Okay.
Or I'm going to bump that up to 2 nature dice and look at, is there another nature card like Clashing Tempers that I want to throw in there, or good old we need 1 cost allies, good old Raptor Herder.
Okay. There's also Ice Trap, which is another card.
That's
Although
true.
we do have a lot of
It's
reactions as is.
Yeah, and it doubles up on 2 health removal that we're already using our unique for.
Yeah. I do like Clashing Tempers as an option, so putting a second nature in feels good.
Okay.
Um, and then I think, well, if we're ever going to run Chimera Charmer, we need at least a
We need the
second
Yeah.
charm die. And otherwise, we don't really need any other charm dice with our cards. We probably want three if we're going to add anything else, like a Golden
Well, if we're
Veil
running Farewell,
or
we
Farewell.
definitely want
Yeah.
more.
Well, you don't need to because outside of Chimera Charmer, Gilder's not going to
Yeah,
cost anything.
that's
Um,
true.
all we have is Call to Action. That's it. We have 3 cards plus the Charmer, the Chimera Charmer. That's it for charm costs. So unless we're gonna add something else that requires charm, we could, in theory, get away with it. There'll be the rare bad draw where you get Chimera Charmer, Call to Action, and I don't know, one Farewell. Then you're like, oh, I got to pick, but I think most of the time you're okay. So it's how you want to lean now for the remaining 8 cards before we pick that that last die.
You've been asking me a lot of questions, so I'm gonna throw this one back to you and see, what do you think? What do you think? How do we finish this deck?
Because we have so many knights, I do lean into a little bit of protection. We talked about the clashing tempers, which I think is also really good at both dealing with the swarmy stuff, but also boosting that attack damage, and the life totals on, like, even putting Dark Reflection up to a 4 lifer or Realm Walker up to a 4 life is nice. So I
Mm-hmm.
like that idea. So I would put in 2 of those and 6 cards left. This is where sometimes I start getting a little. I look at like some tricks, or other cards. I think we're probably we're probably good on allies, but um, we could do
With
something.
nine allies, I don't know. Let me have a
Actually, we
look.
only
I'm
have two
pretty sure.
books, though. We only have 2 books,
Yeah,
so we
we
probably
want
want.
loads. We want more allies for sure, I think.
Let's see. Let's see. We need cost.
And as confusing as it might be, I would probably put the the false demon back in just to draw it.
To
Because I
draw
think
into
it's
it. Okay.
yeah, I think it's a nice draw.
Okay. Uh, back in. I I like um hollows. I tend to like that if I'm in having an illusion
Yep.
because you get this the spin down. Um, do we only have the one Realm Walker really that's putting time pressure? Because Fate Reflection is flexible, and so is Two Shadows.
Yeah.
So Swifty is possible if we needed to get more draw. I was thinking, is there?
Hmm.
You were talking about like to really play the battlefield. Are there any alterations that we want that Jungle Forager could warrant? Or if we wanted to put Purify back, is Enchanted Violinist worth anything here.
If we put a bunch of one cost allies, and we've got a bunch of reactions, I'm a bit worried about our hand just really like screwing us over here if we don't draw into our knights. Because I know you were saying, oh, like we've got a bunch of knights. We kind of currently have to play knights if we want to fix the dice, because there are basic sinks. We do have one basic sink on the Prowler. Apart from that, it's basically only basic sinks on the knights.
Yeah.
So we either want to put even more knights in my opinion, and put like 2x Charmer and 2x what's the other knight we have? The Realm Walker.
Right.
Yeah. Or we look at, are there other basic sinks that exist that are like in illusion and charm, which there aren't so much to
there
my
aren't
recollection.
a lot. There's, I mean, Call Upon the Realms is definitely an option for fixing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, there's not much in these colors.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point,
Juggle.
I would probably
Juggle is,
yeah, that's true.
Is dice fixing plus 3 damage. It's an interesting.
We just really don't
one
care about spin down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting one of.
Spectral Assassin is interesting. You know, sort of putting something back in our hand, getting the draw, getting a sneak attack. But there's not really a lot here.
I'll say what I would do at this point of deck building, which is I would put more copies of cards we already have in the deck.
Okay.
I would just put, and the reason for this is because the way my brain works, I want to now test this deck and see what's good about it, what works, what doesn't work. Because I know the first versions of my decks are always terrible anyway. And if there's a whole bunch of cards in my deck and I test play it, maybe I just drew a weird hand or a strange combination of cards, and that's why my deck sucked and it didn't work the way I thought it was going to.
Okay.
But if I have like a bunch of 3 copies of a card in my deck and it does work, then I know, okay, that core is a good idea. Now I can start getting fancy and putting a bunch of 1x copies of cards to tech for certain things.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's how other people deck build or not, but that's what my thought process is going here.
No, it's good. That's a good thought process. I have done it before where I get stymied and I just sort of do 3x of like if I just have this core synergy, it's like here's the 4 cards I know I want to build around, and then I'm just like put in 3 of everything and then cut down after the fact, because I know what the core idea was and I don't want to lose that core idea. So I get it. So if we're not putting Purify back in, do we go up to 3 Dark Reflection?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. 2 or 3 Realm Walkers?
I think we go for 2.
Okay.
Because I don't like having 3 of those for sure in hand.
Do we want to go up to 3 Rose Gardeners, or is there another 1-cost ally that you would want to put in?
We could potentially just go to 5 illusion dice and put Hollow in. I think that's probably a good idea.
Okay. So go to 5. There we go. And that's 13 allies now, and we've got 1 card left. I am partial to bumping up 2 shadows.
What about Golden Veil that you mentioned earlier?
Or Golden Veil, yeah. Having at least 1 is always good, because there's also the mind games of even if you meditate it, then they never know.
Definitely.
So let's put that in Veil, and that's 30.
All right.
So now we got to play it.
What do you want to test it against, or do you want me to play it?
Well, you said you had 4 other decks that you built. I have not built anything.
Okay.
So I could play this.
Okay. I'll give you options to play against. I've got the scroller that I'm trying to go all in on and see how can I get value from that. I've got cool slash abundance nonsense. I've got burn with Rumia to see if I can get value from the extra card draw and make a otherwise fairly standard burn deck. And then I've got a weird Rumia deck that's about got Canyon's Shelter and Shifting Mist and this sort of spamming things in a weird way.
Oh, I did not. How did I misspell? Well, I think people would want to see new Ramia. Um,
Okay,
so let's do that.
sounds good.
And all right, this deck I can actually delete.
All right, I'm gonna close the. I'm gonna close the.
Oh yeah, so you don't see my card.
I got just cheat, or maybe I can like move it across so I can see chat at the same time.
All right.
I wonder if anyone's watching what they think of this deck. Do you think it's a monstrosity we've constructed, designed by committee, or does it have legs or wings, perhaps? More fittingly.
There you go.
I'm not sure. But I think my philosophy is definitely like you learn if the deck has anything good in it rather than being really judgmental. One of the things that I think was a real learning point for me was one of the very first decks that I made when I started playing Ashtaki was a deck with Holy Knight, I think it is, that you can't target. And I gave it the alteration that prevents it from attacking, Devotion.
Yep.
And the whole idea was it would be this like I did it with Meoni, so I could use and I could just bump up this blocker. You couldn't do anything about it. It just became really, really big, and it was awful. It was like the worst deck I've ever made. It didn't work. It went like 0-8 or something, and I played it over and over again. And then I was like, oh, I'm just a new player. This is the worst idea I've ever had. And then I moved on to better things. And then I think you know where this is going because AshCon, I think it was. No, or is it AIL?
AIL, I think it was.
Yeah. I'm watching Carl in the finals beat someone with a deck that kind of looks like that. It was Jessa, who had the burn, and I was like, oh, okay, my deck idea was actually had merit. I just was doing it wrong.
yeah. He that was the Jessa versus who was it? Wasn't Inquisitor. It was Redentor. Redentor on Herald.
Yeah. Yep. Which was terrifying prospect because that deck, Redentor playing it was really, really good. I remember that deck with fear. And yeah, so if you have a terrible idea and it goes really badly, then try to remember it, I guess. And maybe there's a good version of it that's very different, but also don't similar.
Give up. All right. I've got the game up.
Nice. I'm going to join. No.
Okay. Good to go?
Yep.
All right.
I wonder what you could be playing.
Well, it's interesting to look at your side. And you definitely have information on me.
Yeah, I'm going to try to forget. I know every single card in your deck.
I'm curious as to what you have. All right. Well, might as well.
So I've been trying to experiment with this new version of Rumia, and what's really interesting is Paladin kind of changes your first 5 by giving you extra dice in one card. I think this new version of the Phoenix Born is the opposite of that because I can have fewer dice by drawing cards immediately in round 1.
Yeah, And you get information too, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Which I guess in this game doesn't particularly matter, but maybe I did something
That's true.
tricky.
So I got shifting mist, obviously.
All right. Well, no surprise here, but there is a royal charm.
Nice. Let's use visions to see what's in your hand. Oh, well, that is unexpected. You're running the realm walker. You trying to get me?
Uh-huh.
But now I know.
Your most hated card. It's actually one thing I like about the visions is I was for a while playing with what is it? Not a, memory theft and having information. In that case, it's the information on the entire hand, but having that information is so powerful. And with visions, you can at least guarantee two cards if you wait until the end. Like if you wait until they only have two cards left in hand, then you're guaranteed to know what their last two things are, so you can't be surprised.
Yeah,
which I think is really fun.
that's true. That's what I should have done.
Okay. Well, do it this way. And
Okay.
gotta limit the damage when you're facing Ancestral. You never know. I think it was Lark was saying, what was the card? The Radiant Light. He had tested Radiant Light Ancestor Spirits or Ancestral Army, and you could buff them up to, I think it was like 4 or 5 each. You do like a Blessing of Lightning plus the Radiant Light plus some other card, and you just get smacked for a ton round 1. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I think knowing your deck, I would potentially have not used the Royal Charm until I have the Prowler out, because the whole combo is like you can prowl something after you charm it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe this playline works to mitigate the damage here.
Sure. I'm mostly worried about mitigating damage, I think, in this case.
Yeah.
Because it could easily be, if you just swung out, it would be 5. Can't see all the cards on stream. Is it just
says, yeah.
I
can only see the top player cards.
Interesting. Okay, let me. Oh, that's not going to work. Is that going to? No, that's not going to work either. Hold on. Let me see if I can fix this. I forget. No, that's not going to make that work. Why is this not working? Normally. Oh. Is the toolbar? No. I forget how to hide the toolbar. Let me fix this in
I don't want to look at the stream.
No, it's okay. Let me just fix it. I have to do something weird on my side, but that's okay.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. Man, Gilder's so unbelievably good.
It's a lot of value. I still lose with it plenty, but yeah. All right. Well, hopefully, yeah. There we go. Sorry about that, Dijon. I wasn't looking at what was actually on stream, but now it looks good. Okay. Although now I can't. I think I need to. Yeah, there we go. That should work. Okay. So what did you do? Oh, you're still.
Oh, I was just waiting. Yeah, I'm going to at this point. I think. Let's try. This.
I think I know why. Hang on. It's because I have a different setup for me see if this would work. Uh, oh, normally, okay. Ooh, that's gonna actually. This makes more sense because you're at the top and I'm on the bottom. Hang on. Let me do something real quick. There we go. Cut off the borders and everything. I was on my wrong tab. That's much better. Oh, except it's on the wrong video and audio.
Oh, sorry. I maybe just want to say anything.
Oh, no, I was looking at I had the wrong audio, the wrong source selected. Boop boop boop. Yeah, that in and okay. Copy the transform and then paste the transform. It's always fun doing these things live.
Yeah, that's true. Well, these things right. Easily solvable with OBS.
Boom. There we go. Funny enough, remember how I said I couldn't get my video working? It all of a sudden started using the other camera. So just for the sake of the stream.
Nice.
And now I can zoom in for the people at home. That should be better. Much better. All right.
Dijon says cool, but that might just be...
Well, you got to please the Colonel. Colonel Mustard. All right, here we go. Let's bring out the Prowler book. And yeah. Nice thing is I haven't had
the artwork on the summon book looks so sinister compared to everything else.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's very sinister. The eye and the what is that? The blade? I'm not really sure. It's very interesting. Okay, so taking an extra 2.
Yeah, I'm a bit behind on dice here. So attacking to face is probably a bad idea, but I kind of want to get my ancestral army in my shelter before you have something that can prevent it from exhausting.
Yeah. I'm just curious as to. Yeah, no, I'll leave it.
Yeah, just let it through. It's fair.
Canyon shelter, boy. All right, here we go. Well, now there's no better time to summon a prowler. And yep, that's about all I need to do. 6 basics, yay. I played against Alfred for the last one and done game, and I was crushing it. And for I think 6 rounds, he rolled 6 power sides and never more than 2 basics. And so even though it came down to the last minute on the clock for both of us, and he had he was going to go into fatigue. He went into fatigue too late for me to do anything, but it was just wild the dice he was rolling. I couldn't believe it. All right, now I have to meditate.
Yeah, fatigue's really weird with the variance in Ashes because it's like it doesn't matter until suddenly it's a high variance game again at the end when you're really hoping to roll not all basics.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Realm Walker I knew about. What did I do about that? And the Prowler will kill something potentially unless I just exclusively put out high attack units.
Yeah, I kind of now at this point I do. Forgetting that you had mentioned a Canyon Shelter style deck, I do regret the Royal Charm move earlier, but 'tis what it is. Oh, well, isn't that a good draw for you?
it's not only do you draw 2 with Ramia, you then get to filter with the ancestral spirits.
Yep.
So you kind of get like the choice of 2 of 4 cards, which is mad. All right, so there's your double night opener, which is pretty nasty because I don't have removal necessarily.
And at least one dark reflection is gone, so hopefully the people get to see the other ones come out.
Yeah, let's see what I do here. And then the acrobat works well here with the prowler. It's nasty. Nasty. I think I'll just, as my side action, be sad. Let's see. I'm gonna summon a spirit.
Okay.
Let's see. By which mechanism would you like to deal with this?
Yeah, it's like I definitely have to do something. Okay.
I just have to remember the prowler is going to go away, so that's good news.
Yes. Still, yeah. Still think I'll do a little bit of a punchback.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Makes sense. Yeah. I think doing it this way, though, forces you to attack my Phoenixborn, which is, I think, what I want here.
Yeah.
If you want to combo and kill the spirit here.
Combo, kill the spirit, deal 5. Just race you a little bit. It's not the worst thing I've heard.
I think it's not really what you want to do, which is why I'm presenting it to you as your option.
Play fast, play aggressive. Let's do it.
All right.
So flip and damage. And then the punch. So that's, I mean, yeah, that's not the worst. Yeah. Dealing 8.
The problem is not this the right early in the game. Yeah. I can hear, oh no, because I can only have 2 ancestral spirits. Ooh. That is very upsetting.
So you drew a second one. That's intense.
Yeah. But that was not the right move. But that's fine.
I specifically did not kill off the other ancestral spirit because I double checked the unit count and I was like, okay.
Big sad.
Yes. Well, now I'm in, I guess, a little bit of trouble in theory.
I can't really deal any damage to your units because you'll guard the ancestral spirit attack on the Gilder anyway. So I think I attack with both of them so that you can't keep the... Oh no, you can do that anyway. There's no right answer here.
Yeah.
So I'll let you potentially not guard this.
No, that one.
Which is always... Yeah, but you always leave the option for your opponent to make a mistake.
And...
Yeah, we'll put 1 damage on your Gilder. Why not?
Makes sense. That's the fun and tricky part for new players. How do you evaluate? Like, would you have done the same thing? Would you have kept the Gilder alive, or do you save the 2 life?
Totally. The deck you're running, you want to guard and use your life total as much as possible. It's why I'm not necessarily upset about whenever you hit me for the big 5 damage. I'm more concerned about the battlefield, which ultimately I didn't do too well on either because of my army mishap. But yeah. Okay. I'm not going to be hyper aware of that conjuration limit if I try and Canyon Shelter here.
Yeah. Which is interesting now. Because now I think I can slow things down a little bit. Actually, no.
Let's speed things up.
That's
Psych.
almost, uh, but not quite. Why is it going so slow? There we go.
Okay. This is paying on to the spirit.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's not have that happen.
And you're dealing to number 4.
Uh,
That's, yeah.
yeah, the other gilder. Because I need to finish off the. Well, I mean, I could put this damage anywhere. Technically, I could probably put it on the realm.
Let's just play ping
In a
pong.
reverse, though, yeah. Nice. I'm reminded of the impossible German freeze frame.
Yeah, Brian always has fate reflection.
Yeah. It's like the YouTube thumbnail face.
I snapped that one, and then I think I
Nice.
forget who it was who added the text to it.
Might as well draw some cards.
Curious as to what
From
you see.
darkness.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Did you not? Oh, yeah,
I see it in
it
the
says
log. Yeah. I didn't know. I mean, makes sense because I'm the one showing you. It
Yeah,
should tell me what
you have to
see.
look away while I look at the 2 cards in your hand. That'd be great. I kind of need my things to die, which is the problem with attacking them into guilders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about we just play. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you can have
Okay.
that one. I guess you could stuff it again.
Is that the terminology for the
Yeah.
shelter?
Yeah.
One stuffs the shelter.
um, let's see. Okay. Let's try that.
Okay. For a moment, I was like, wait, another gilder?
Yep.
Then I forgot, of course. Frog up.
Frog up. I'll just do the 3.
Okay.
Played a little fast the first round, but slow it down
Yeah.
just a wee bit.
Okay, let's try. We gotta have life in us.
You got to do it.
Right.
Oh, all
There
right.
we go.
This is fun.
Yeah. I'm gonna make that Realm Walker a 3/3. No, I'm gonna kill your gilder.
Hmm. Interesting question. I think we'll do it this way.
Do you want those acrobats to trade into each other? You could become a 4/3 if you want.
Yeah, I could. Uh, actually, hmm. No, let's do it this way. It's not the most efficient, but it is. Oh, actually, no. What am I doing?
I think I've realized something about your deck, or our deck, as the case may be, which is we want a way of consistently spending the charm dice to put it on the royal charm, which we don't
We
really
don't
have.
have. Yes.
Yeah. So the ruby cobra could be good. Oh, that is nasty. And do you just win? Yeah.
Not. Oh yeah, I do. And
GG.
that's it. Flip
Nice.
just for the extra 4 damage.
Oh yeah, I did. I really need to respect Realm Walker. It's such a good card, man.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
a valid reason to hate the unit.
I had some fun things that I needed to do. I just really I thought I was like actually starting to claw things back there with like Out of the Mist I was going to play and just obliterate something.
Yeah, I had
I should have done that. Did you have the Fate Reflection or the
no,
Golden Veil?
I had 2 from Darkness in hand.
Ooh, yes, I've
So
got one of those.
that would have been fun. And then Rose Gardener and False Demon. So I actually drew the book, which would have been totally okay because I could play everything. The From Darkness, I think once I have the Realm Walker and Umbral exhausted, deals with almost anything you have. Um, so it was fun.
Nice.
I don't think that necessarily indicates this deck doesn't have flaws, like you said, spending the charm. But it's a fun deck and it's an aggressive deck, which I do enjoy. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we it did a bunch of the stuff we said, like the Gift of Wings on the Brown Walker. That I forgot about that, quite
mhm.
frankly, and that's what lost me the game. And the Charm Dice and the Prowler. Yeah, yeah. I think the improvement that you mentioned would be definitely a good one.
I like it.
I'm not sure how we solve that without the 4 books. If we're running two knights, then we can't really run Ruby Cobra.
I don't think Cobra is the right play here. I do think this is more
No.
of the aggressive deck, and the only thing you might want to do is more removal, whether it's pseudo removal like ink spill, or you're just removing the blockers temporarily, or dealer's choice,
Yeah.
or if you did want a little bit more long term plan to coincide with the hollows that we have, then not Rile the Meek. Oh my gosh, what's it called now? Return to Soil. That would be
Yeah.
just another source of pain. But this, because actually that in this deck, well, the timing of Return to Soil doesn't quite work because you have to kill the Ancestral Army first, and you have a Canyon
Yeah.
Shelter. But being able to remove it from game is a nice little trick there. But
You
yeah,
can
this.
also just spend the Royal Charm Paradise, of course, with a basic on the knights.
Mhm.
So you shouldn't have too much difficulty triggering the Royal Charm actually from the basic sinks you have on the knights, and you have on the Gift of Wings, and you have on the Dark Reflection. That one's a hard one to remember for some reason.
Yes. Yeah. No. This. I'm interested. Maybe you'll take the deck. I'll share the link in the media channel anyway, just so people see what we have, and take it for a spin. Let me
Yeah.
know what your thoughts are after a few games. I don't get in as many games as I used to, but yeah, it'll be fun. And um, I don't know what your plans are officially for future, but you wanted to do this regularly, right? Ideally, most
Yeah,
Sundays.
definitely. Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be nice to have regular Ashes content that people can tune into if they want to and see new stuff, suggest anything that they want to see discussed.
Yeah, and if we can do this time, I know that at the very least it works for, I assume, the majority of the community, because Dijon is in the UK time zone. We've got a 12-hour difference, so it's a little early for Alfred and Underrug. But everyone else, I think it's sort of in a good time zone for the Americas, where even if you're on the West Coast, it's still like it's a little bit earlier, but not too early. You can still do your day, and it's not too late for other people. So yeah, this was
Definitely.
fun, and
Yeah, it was a blast.
I want to see how the week evolves. You know that people are just going to be pumping out games. Carl's probably already got 30 games under his belt.
Definitely.
We'll see how the meta evolves, and next time, maybe we'll be a little more planned or structured as to our discussion topics. Or I don't know. Do you want community feedback? Do you want them to offer things, or do you want to just run this definitely with your thoughts?
If anyone has anything we want to see discussed or any kind of content, anything for new players or strategy, absolutely. And then I have a bunch of my own ideas, of course, for stuff that we can do.
Absolutely, yeah. And what's really cool, and it's something I still hope that takes off a little bit more, is the replays that are saved now are automatic for competitive games. So if there are any games that you play that you're like, oh, this was like, there was some really good decision points, or this had some really hype moments, and you just remember, like, jot it down, then it's something we could review, as well as like, here's why I made this decision, or here's what I did wrong, and it turned the game the opposite way, or whatever it is, right? Or if community members send in and be like, what should I have done? Because I still haven't actually really gone through a replay myself yet, but I think that's a really cool opportunity we have.
I'm about to play a one and done, actually, my top 8 versus Wave C. Which will be really interesting to see. I have to look through all of the lists that they have put, and before I make my decision on what to run. I think literally scheduled for now, so that'll be that'll be interesting.
Well, good luck. I just played a deck I made 2 minutes beforehand with the wrong dice, so
okay.
Don't do that.
I'll try not to do that.
Yeah.
I'm so paranoid checking all the deck list over and over again to make sure I don't repeat something.
Thankfully, I didn't repeat cards. I just didn't select my dice successfully. So yeah, that happens. Cool. Well, thanks for creating this idea, and it's nice to see a few members join, and hopefully other people's watch and give us some feedback.
Definitely.
And yeah, for now, I think next week is good, is the current plan. But we'll confirm and schedule, sometime in the coming days.
Cool. Absolutely. Awesome.
So here goes our classic outro. Do you want to do it?
Let's see if I can remember all of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them now.
All right. Let's see. Hang on. I gotta remember the dice types exist. So you got a frog up. You've got to wolf down.
Yeah.
You snake out.
Yeah.
Are there other ones?
Yeah.
You goat around and you divine the place.
Lion on. Actually, I forget them all. We need Killer Cactus. I forget Lion on and Turtle Time. I know it's the last one.
Turtle Time. Nice.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Have a good one.
If you're not janky, you're stanky.
Stanky. Have a great one, everyone. Ciao. All right.